demon is a writing demon. He goes by the name of Mara. He likes to wear necklaces of skulls, and he brandishes weapons in his many arms. Legend has it that the Buddha had a face-off with Mara right before he achieved enlightenment. Mara was determined to keep the Buddha locked in the cycle of craving. So to distract the Buddha, Mara brings on board a couple of things. He tries a series of storms worthy of the Weather Channel. And when that doesn't work, he brings on board his seductive daughters with interesting names like lust, thirst, discontent, and greed. And when that doesn't work, Mara plays his last card. He asks the Buddha, what exactly gave the Buddha the right to sit under that tree? So it's not as though the Buddha had a cappuccino, fountain pen, notebook, laptop sitting underneath that tree. What's the connection to writing? There's a lot of connection, actually. When we write, we're subject to doubt and distraction. What gives me the authority to speak on that topic? Should I go back to the library, do more research, increase my credibility? What makes me think I'm good enough? What if someone corrects or criticizes me? Writing seems a future-oriented endeavor, much more so than other everyday things we do, like brushing our teeth or walking the dog or reading a book. We tend to think about how other people at a future date will think about the document we're working on right now. We've been trained to think this way mindlessly. School tells us to consider our audience, think of our reader, sometimes even at the earliest, roughest stages. So think back to a time when writing was a struggle for you. It happens to all of us. Maybe it was 6 months ago, maybe it was last week, maybe it was yesterday. Maybe you just pulled an all-nighter this semester to finish a paper, or maybe it was a high-stakes end-of-the-year report for a really picky boss, or maybe you can't get beyond page 10 of that novel you told all your friends you were going to write. Well, little did you know it, but on those occasions, you weren't alone. Mara was in the room with you. Mara was standing behind you as you sat at that desk. Mara represents our future-oriented, product-oriented perfectionism. In the 1990s, when I was a graduate student, I was plagued by my own writing demon. I was living in a tenement building that was literally falling to pieces, like I felt my self-confidence was falling to pieces. Green siding kept plummeting off the outside of the apartment building. And on lethargic afternoons, I tried to write to the sound of drills from the neighborhood auto mechanics. I'd labor for months on a single poem. My 20s ticked by, whole seasons spent at a vintage typewriter, then an electric typewriter, and then a laptop, with nothing much to show for it except for a handful of literary journal publications and a whole bookshelf crammed full of notebooks and journals. I felt hostage to a massive problem. Here I was in my second graduate program for writing, and I wasn't producing much at all. So my Mara came with the faces of my fellow graduate students and my teachers. And my Mara wore a necklace of my student loans and my worries and my isolation. Everybody knows how the Buddha's story ends. He achieves enlightenment. So how did the Buddha work around this Mara guy? The Buddha simply lowered his right palm to the ground, breathing in here, breathing out now. This causes Mara to topple off the elephant he came riding in on, and it causes the army of distractions to flee, and the Buddha achieves enlightenment. What I came to realize was that much more fulfilling writing experiences were possible if I stopped obsessing on the future. Instead, if I could pay attention to what was happening right now, writing would occur for me. What I came to realize was that this very moment is perfect for writing. So mindfulness is the detached, non-judgmental observation of the ever-changing present moment. And if we can become more mindful as we write, we can drop a lot of the things that are stressing us out and gain whole new access to resources that we didn't see before. We can actually reconfigure this guy Mara from something that's an obstacle to something that's helpful. In fact, the very thing that bothers most of us, most of all, as we write, this inner demon of mindlessness, can become our #1 asset. And it happens in 3 stages. I like to think of them as demon, monkey, river. So demon, monkey, river. All right, so demon. First thing we do, we downgrade Mara. We reduce him from a 3-dimensional monster to what he really is. Just a bunch of smoke and self-talk. When we write, we are totally alone. Our reader is not in the room with us, but yet most of us act as though we have characters in the room, our pretend readers, and the plot of our story is whether or not we'll succeed. Mara is tricky and elusive. Without mindfulness, we won't know that he's bothering us. Anything, and I mean anything, will become more appealing than writing. Changing the litter box, filling out your tax forms. So the problem with our Mara is that he isn't here to cheer us on through the messiness of creating and thinking. Our Mara isn't invested in our progress or our drafts. Because Mara is a creature coming from the future, he expects a piece of writing that exists only in the future. A polished, finished, final draft that we haven't had time to write. So we stress ourselves out pursuing on-the-spot perfectionism, hitting the backspace key, staring out into space, trying hard not to evoke the criticism of our imaginary reader. I once had a really funny run-in encounter with one of my own writing demons. This was after my writing started to flow again. A colleague and I were working on a book proposal for a really prestigious British press for an editor I'm going to call Mr. Chadwick Spear, and the press was in London. Okay? So I'm at an academic conference, and I see way off in the distance of the convention hall the banner for this British press, and I see a man standing underneath the banner. I call up my colleague and I say, I think I see Mr. Chadwick Spear. I'm going to go introduce myself. Well, a funny thing happened as I crossed across that convention hall floor. I had envisioned Mr. Chadwick Spear as being, 55 to 60-year-old pipe-smoking, tweed jacket, leather patch type of reader, right? No. As I walked across the convention floor, Mr. Chadwick Spear was 25 to 30 years old, interesting facial hair, and full sleeve tattoos. How do I know? Because he's wearing this kind of leather S&M vest. Right? So, my point is that whenever I would email or work on the book proposal for Mr. Chadwick Spear, I had this other intimidating, scary Mara in the head who didn't exist, right? So, what do? How do you banish your writing demon? The next time you're writing and you find yourself procrastinating or feeling like you have nothing to say, breathing in, here, breathing out, now. Take a look around your room. You're totally alone. There is no reader as you're writing. You are free to make mistakes, free to play without penalty. So, monkey. All right. Once we downgrade our Mara, we get something in a little less intimidating form. It's what Buddhists call monkey mind. Inside all of us is ongoing babble. Anyone who's tried meditating will tell you that our monkey mind doesn't go away, at least not for very long. This monkey mindlessness is our human default position. William James calculated that the average human ability to stay focused on the present moment lasts only between 5 and 12 seconds. And a Harvard study found that we off-road from the present moment about 47% of the time. So, as you can imagine, running inside me right now is a monkey soundtrack. And there's a monkey soundtrack actually inside each of you in your seats right now. Like a mischievous monkey, our internal talk can cause real damage to our writing. Our internal talk is very persuasive. We believe everything it tells us. Our monkey, he tells us stories about our writing ability that affect the choices we make during the writing process and affect our mood. So I tell myself, I'm not very good at poetry. If I show this poem to the group, everyone's going to think I'm really unimaginative and dull, and it will show on their faces. The stories the monkey tells us can be as limiting on our writing experience as any stressful deadline or hefty word page requirement. Okay, so how do you deal with the monkey? The next time you're writing, breathing in, here, breathing out, now. Get a sense of your mood about having to write, and then backtrack a bit and think, how have I been talking to myself, either about the task at hand or about my writing ability? Don't judge yourself, but don't let yourself be kidnapped by negative monkey storylines. River. All right, so now you're in the home stretch. Because once you banish that demon and tame that crazy monkey, what we've got left is a bunch of raw, constant, neutral language production. Inside all of us is a river of content. I like to think of it as non-stop writing. Every breath is covered in language. There are no blank moments. There is no writer's block if we can perceive the moment mindfully. Something is always arising on the surface of our mind due to impermanence. A sentence, a phrase, an image, a fragment. And if we watch, everything changes. Writing inability becomes ability. Word, no word, word. In my profession, I have met many people who don't feel very positive about their writing, from all walks of life, all educational backgrounds. I think this is deeply unfortunate. In a literate society like our own, we all face writing all the time, which means that we constantly face opportunities to feel badly about ourselves all the time. But it doesn't have to be that way with a more mindful approach to the writing moment. It doesn't even take lots of time to become a more productive, calm, peaceful writer. You could start with the very next text message you send today at break. The ability to write is nothing more than staying as accepting as possible in the now. So don't suffer as you write. Stay right where you are. This very moment is perfect for writing, and so are you.